Good evening, everybody. Very special edition of our Wednesday interviews. Tonight, we have with us Rabbi Shimmy Weinbaum from the great city of New York, the international headquarters of Tzivos Hashem. So, Rabbi Weinbaum, well, you disappeared on us. We want to see your beautiful punim. First of all, thank you so much for taking out the time to join us. Really appreciate it. Very special. So thank you for joining us on our Wednesday night interviews with fascinating people. And we really appreciate your presence. So first of all, thank you very much. Let's get started at the beginning. What is Tzivos Hashem? Please, what is the history of Tzivos Hashem? When did it start? Give us a little background. Tell us about Tzivos Hashem.
So first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here. I remember when I was a very young child and you came for your brother's wedding to London, and I stayed in our home. I was a little boy then.
It was a long time ago.
I've always looked up and respected the big rabbi, so it's a big honor to be here.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. Enough. That's all I paid you to say. Now get some answers for us. Tell us about Tzivos Hashem. What's the history? When did it start?
Basically, actually, there's quite a big myth about Tzivos Hashem, in the sense that many people, when you speak about hear about Tzivos Hashem, their perception of Tzivos Hashem is that it's a program. Also, their perception of Tzivos Hashem is that it's for children. And even more bigger misconception is that it was established by the Rabbi. That's, I would say, the three big myths that hopefully we'll be able to debunk tonight. And the sense that when we look in this, actually now we're coming up to Yud Shvat, and there's the mimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out before he passed away, which has 20 chapters, and the Rebbe elaborated on one of those chapters each year. So the 10th and the 11th chapter of that mimer of Basi Legani speak about Tzivos Hashem. And that was given out in Tafshin Yud in 1950. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he elaborated on those chapters, was the first time was in the year of Tafshin Chaf Aleph, which that was 1961, 60 and 61. And then in the year Tafshin Mem and Mem Aleph, where the Rebbe spoke about again about that. And what's really clear in that mimer is the Rebbe goes back to how the name Tzivos Hashem was given to the Jewish people officially when they left Mitzrayim. So really, as it says in the parsha, now a boy, right? So it says, and that's why there couldn't be a better timing for this one. Be'etzem hayayim hazeh, in the midst of that day, Yatzu Tzivos Hashem mi'eretz Mitzrayim. God's army was left in Mitzrayim. So the Jewish people as a whole are referred to as Tzivos Hashem. But there's actually a very, very interesting rally that happened in the time of Pesach in the year of 1941, when the Rebbe had a rally with the children. And the Rebbe spoke then and said that the first Jew in Tzivos Hashem was Avraham Avinu. And then the Rebbe said that the first child in Tzivos Hashem was Yitzchak. Now, obviously, somebody didn't like that one, because they wrote, the Rebbe, by the Farbrengen on Pesach, the Rebbe spoke that I got big complaints. How could I say that when the first time the Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem is only when they left Mitzrayim? So the Rebbe goes back to say that actually Tzivos Hashem started by the beginning of creation. Because each day of creation, God created the world with one of his 7 names, and one of them is the name of Tzivos. And so that's really when Tzivos Hashem started. So going back to history, really it started by creation. And really what Tzivos Hashem is, that's the definition of the Jewish people. They're referred to as God's army because their mission is to conquer the world for Hashem.
So when did the Rebbe establish the Tzivos Hashem program, and how does it fit in there, with your description about the Jewish people leaving Egypt and being described as Tzivos Hashem, and one of God's name is Tzavokos, the Lord of Hosts. So when did the Rebbe begin the Tzivos Hashem project, and how does it blend together with your description?
So that actually started 40 years ago. This is the 40th year anniversary. It was Tafshin Mem. So we're talking
1980.
about 1980. I was 6 years old. And the Rebbe started this very special recruitment campaign to recruit children to volunteer to join Hashem's army. You see, we really, as the Jewish people, like I was saying before about debunking the myth that it's not really a children's program. Really, the Jewish children, Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem, but we only really become, I would say, drafted in the sense that we have a non-voluntary draft. You're obligated to join the army when you become bar and bas mitzvah. And more so, to join the physical army, like when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim and they fought wars against Amalek or other nations, you had to be 20 to join that part of the army. But the Rebbe brings down that how there was one Shevet, which one tribe, Levi, who they were counted from when they were born. It says from when they were 30 days and old, they were counted according to some opinions, even from when they were born, according to some opinions, even when they were in their mother's womb, they were already counted. And the idea of this is that they have more of a spiritual service. They're not fighting a physical war. They're serving God spiritually. And their entire life is dedicated to God. And the Rambam, Maimonides, explains how Kol Misha Nodav Ruchai, whoever wants to volunteer, could be like Shevet Levi. Now, you look at the Rebbe Shluchim, how they have volunteered to dedicate their entire life to serving God. And here you see this is what Shevet Levi is all about, that just like they had to do it from when they were born. Any person who wants to could volunteer to be part of this army and dedicate their life to conquering the world for God. So the Rebbe turned to the children in 1980, and he said like this: if you look into the Talmud, if you look into the Gemara, according to all the signs, we are the edge of the last moments of Galus. But whenever there's a special campaign to be able to be achieved, if the army wants to be able to really do something special, they bring in new reserves. So the Rebbe said, I'm drafting now the best soldiers, new reserves, the Rebbe called it. And he said, I'm drafting the children, asking them to volunteer to join God's army and dedicate their life to this mission to conquer the world for Hashem. So
Wow.
really, it was a it's very much connected. In fact, the first rally, when he gathered the children together, he told them, this is nothing new. This is started when, back in the beginning, but now we need you to finish off the war. So this was really, the Rebbe didn't make this into a program. He actually told the children constantly, every time he met, that you're part of a real army. You have a very special power, that with what you do, you could physically change the world. And the Rebbe did something so amazing. He empowered these children by explaining to them that when we overcome our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, we actually eradicate bad from the world. So it's not that, that what we do is a personal fight, and then there's the big, big army in the world that will take care of the bad guys. No, it's us that actually have an impact. When we do what we need to do, we actually change the world for better.
So, as you said, it's not only for children, but it's focused on children. What are some of the programs for children that Tzivos Hashem provides?
So because it's an army, we call them campaigns. And we divide them up into categories. It's actually fascinating that this goes back to the beginning when the Rebbe introduced this idea to children of being part of an army, and the Rebbe told the children when they do their missions, they're going to get medals and they're going to go up in rank. And there was one educator who didn't like it. He was actually he felt that this was against the Torah. That's what he wrote to the Rabbi. I feel like this doesn't sit well with the Torah, because Torah is Torah is about peace and tranquility, and you're teaching children to be part of an army, and it's fighting. So the Rebbe explained that, in his opinion, he wrote a 2-page letter. It's in English. I should really share the link with everybody. It's just a fascinating letter
If you could
in
put it in the
English.
chat, that'd be great.
And the Rebbe points out how, according to his opinion, the root challenge of today's youth is the lack of acceptance of authority. Now, today, I think most of us have come to terms with that.
We're old.
But 40 years ago, when I was 6, we were still getting the cane back in England. And I still feel the sting, So it was very different in those days, but the Rebbe identified back then, in his opinion, that was the root challenge. And the Rebbe went on to say that he had thought long and hard, because this challenge wasn't just about authority of God. It was really also about acceptance, the authority of people's parents or teachers. And the Rebbe went on to say that an American child who has a sense of cockiness even feels like he can outsmart the cops and the judge. So after thinking, he thought long and hard, how do you change the nature of a child who just brought up with a sense of freedom, that he can do whatever he wants? He doesn't not limited or to have to follow anyone's authority. And the Rebbe said, after thinking long and hard, I came to the conclusion that there is no other way, which is a very powerful term. The only way to deal with this would be to create a system of discipline and obedience to rules. Now, here's the challenge. You're talking about children that don't accept authority. So how are you going to get someone to have the system of discipline, obedience to rules? How's it going to work? So the Rebbe, the brilliance was, and this is the genius of the Rebbe, how this system of discipline and obedience to rules, you have to induce a child to accept upon himself without coercion. So you can't force the kids to do this, but you have to induce them to do it, to accept the system of discipline upon themselves. So when we saw this and we realized what the Rebbe wants, we actually took this idea, but we made what I would call a separate system of discipline for different areas of a child's life. Let's take one example. One of the campaigns that we do, it's called the Chidon. And this Chidon is an incredible challenge for the children. We started this 8 years ago, and we challenged children around the world who would be willing to have the discipline to learn every day for half an hour and learn over 5 years, learn all 613 mitzvahs. Now, not only to learn the mitzvahs and to know what they are, to learn their source, to know who they apply to, where they apply, when they apply, what their punishment is, and the details about the mitzvahs. So there's many, many details for all of the 613 mitzvahs, and to know it so inside out, back to front, that we could ask them questions like, how many mitzvahs have to do with money, or how many mitzvahs only apply to women, or how many mitzvahs only apply to men, or how many mitzvahs only apply to a Levi, or which mitzvahs are connected with a lamb, and so on and so forth. Now, we were really incredibly lucky that there was 54 children who signed up and took this on 8 years ago. This year, over 5,000 children are already part of this.
Amazing.
It's really amazing because they've had the incredible discipline to really learn every day for 5 years. And those children who are graduating now, you can't imagine that feeling of knowing, because they do in the 5th year, they actually review all the 613 mitzvahs as well as part of this program. So it's a program where they have incredible discipline. They're learning this over 5 years, and then actually being able to retain it. And guess what? It's in their spare time as well. It's not done in school. So the reason why they do it, I think the core reason is we induce them, as the Rebbe said, to accept upon themselves and have this discipline with an unbelievable program, an amazing experience in Crown Heights. And the children get together for what we call the Epic Chidon experience. It's a 4-day program starting on Thursday morning. It goes till Sunday night, a little bit like the Kinnis, but on steroids. And it's again, it's this idea of inducing the children, but they accept it upon themselves. No one forced them. They volunteered to be part of it, and they've accomplished great things. And then there's other programs like we do for Shabbos Mevarachim Tehillim. The children say Tehillim on Shabbos Mevarachim. We start them in pre-1A in the beginning with one kapitel, and every month their quota grows. And by the time they are 7th grade, they become bar and bas mitzvah. They are saying the entire Tehillim on Shabbos Mevarachim. But again, it's something that they are not forced to do. They are encouraged and motivated to do. For each program, we have its own set of medals. You can get up to 10 medals for each program. And every time you earn enough medals, you go up, you're promoted in ranks. So there's really, really an incredible system. And this is all the geniosity which was engineered by the Rebbe. I mean, Tani Baal Peh is another program for the children to learn Tani Baal Peh. And we have different ladders that they can take. Some children are in ladder Aleph, which means by the time they finish, they'll know one Perik. Some children know 53 prakim, 53 chapters of Tanya by heart. So it's really unbelievable. Many different programs for davening, nigunim, and so on. But each of them have their own unique system of discipline with its own set of medals. And it really is incredible to see how when you induce the child, they accept this upon themselves. They don't feel forced. They have ownership. They feel a responsibility. And just to give you an idea of how it's grown, and 13 years ago when we started doing the Tehillim on Shabbos Mevarachim, we were getting about 30,000 kapitlach over the year. At this point in time, it's more like 2 million. And it's mind-boggling how the children are so committed. And another example of the children's commitment, like real soldiers, was last year. This incredible experience of the Chidon their reward was supposed to be this experience in Crown Heights, this unbelievable Shabbaton that children would fly in from all over the world. And then they had their tickets already. It was so psyched up. And then COVID kicked in and they couldn't come. And we were sure that this year the numbers would drop tremendously and the kids wouldn't sign up again because we couldn't even promise them that this year there would be that experience again. But they're real soldiers. They're God soldiers. They're committed and they go all the way. So that's just a little glimpse of some of the things. And let's move on.
Okay, so we have on, here we have parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. What can you tell parents that they can share, or what can you share with parents, some specifics about Tzivos Hashem?
So I would repeat what the Rebbe said to the parents, and that is, it's our responsibility as parents and grandparents to be able to give children the pride of what it means to belong to God's army. And to explain to them, the Rebbe literally wanted the parents to be part of this in the sense of, if you would put things in perspective, if we are all soldiers in God's army and the children are the soldiers, then who's their commanders? Who's their commanders? I mean, it's a real army. The Rebbe has told that to us over and over again. The Rebbe told us if you want to know how Tzivos Hashem should function, look at a regular army. Why? Not because we can learn from them, but just the other way around. The Rebbe said that everything that exists in this physical world actually is a mirror of what exists in the spiritual world. So the reason why a physical army exists in this physical world is because in the spiritual world, there's God's army. So we can learn from a regular army, and every soldier needs a commander. They need someone to train them. And I think that if you're ready to take on that role, then you're not just a parent, you're not just a grandparent. You're actually you're being God's commander to be able to command the children as soldiers. And unlike, as the Rebbe explained, children today don't listen to commands because you're forcing it upon them. But if you can give them that pride of how special it is that God, and the Rebbe said, speak about God, go into detail of how great God is, and yet He needs you. He's chosen you to be His soldier, to conquer the world. Explain to the children that God chose not to be in charge of the world, but to leave it up to us which is so powerful, to be in charge of the world.
Wow.
We can decide who is in charge, the good or the bad. And it's up to us. The decisions that we make will impact the world. So really, there's nothing more to I would say, to empower the soldiers, to inspire the soldiers of how lucky they are and how special it is, what a merit it is to be God's soldiers, because that's what the children need today more than anything else. Honestly, we give the children more prizes than anyone in the world. But what we've realized is that they don't go for it. They're more interested in the medal and the rank than the prizes. And even more than the medal and more than the rank, the children who are really devoted is because they really feel like they're making a difference. And that's what you can do. You can give that children that empowerment, that what they're doing is really changing the world. And they, as the Rabbi always said, will bring Mashiach.
No kidding. Wow. So we spoke about it in the global and the conceptual. Let's bring it down to the micro. Can you share with us a story or two of how Tzivos Hashem has impacted a specific individual person's life?
Well, that's a very, very big one, Sugazant.
Excuse me.
That's a very big one. I'm going to start off by saying something really powerful, and just it will also give some weight on really what the Rebbe, how this really is such a powerful army. Sugazant. So there was a child, and there was the executive director of Tzivos Hashem, whose name is Rabbi Ben Yaminson. Remember, I was 6 when this was started, and he was at home sleeping, 2:00 in the morning, and he gets a call from the Rebbe's secretary, and the call is to please go into the office at 2:00 in the morning, and to promote it, find out if a child is registered. Number one, and number two. Second thing is, if they are registered, promote them in rank. Now, he's a soldier. He didn't ask questions, got out of bed, went to the office. Now, in those days, it was before computers already. And the way that they had the children recorded was on index cards. So he went through the index cards. At that time, there was 60,000 of them. Found the child's name, because they were all done by in alphabetical order. He was registered. And he promoted him in rank, which meant he crossed out the previous rank and circled the next rank on the card. And then went home, went back to bed. Now, the next day, he's in 770, and Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chadikov, sees him, and he says, you never asked me why I called. He says, listen, soldiers don't ask questions before they complete the command. So I did what I was told. I was sure that was something important if you called at 2:00 in the morning. And he said, you should know that last night around 1:45, the phone was ringing off the hook. It was a mother called from the hospital saying that their child had been in a terrible accident and they were in critical condition, and the doctor had only given several hours left. And they were asking for a bracha, but the Rebbe was still in the middle of Yechidus. And as soon as the next person went out, I went into Yechidus, into the Rebbe's room, and I asked the Rebbe for a bracha. And the Rebbe said, find out if he's in Tzivos Hashem, and if not, promote him in rank. He says, today, I got a call from the mother to say that not only he's out of critical condition, he'll be coming home soon. And this was something fascinating, how the Rebbe showed us that this promotion in rank, and he said this many times to the children, wasn't just a nice gesture, but actually every time you earned a medal, and every time you, quote unquote, went up in rank, it was bringing brachas to you and to your whole family. So this is a very powerful personal story from somebody who actually is life-changing from having a promotion in rank. I will tell you that I've noticed this and see this with the children, and it's really mind-boggling. And I was speaking to the principal of Darchim Menachem here in Crown Heights, who told me he grew up in Australia, and he said he was not religious when he was growing up, but he, for some reason, got hold of a Tzivos Hashem T-shirt back then, also like 40 years ago. and he wore this for Shabbos. It was his like Shabbos clothes, and he made kiddush with it. That's what they did it in their home. They weren't observant, but they did make kiddush. And he said, I felt a spiritual connection to this. It was something that I could never explain. So it really is something unique and something special. And while it's amazing how there is the physical side with the prizes and the ranks and the medals and the programs that we do, there definitely is something beyond physical that is very much connected to this.
So now let's take it to you personally. How did you decide to make Tzivos Hashem your life's work? How did you get involved? You were only 6 years old when it started, but how did you decide to devote your personal life and make it your mission?
The quick answer is I didn't know back then why, but now I do. In what happened, this actually happened. This program that we spoke about before was the Chidon. We started this about 8 years ago when we told you we had 54 kids. That year when the children came, we actually, after giving them the most incredible time, and they were so thankful to us, we turned to them and we asked them for a favor. The favor that I asked them was, if you really enjoyed this, would you bring a friend? And they took me seriously. The next year, there was 229 children. And we had one for the boys, one for the girls, and the weekend for the girls was arriving, and this is the second year, and a lot of children coming, and I did not have the expenses, that the money that I needed for the expenses, like every other Chabad rabbi, and that we needed more support in a lot of areas. It was getting late at night or early in the morning, I would say, and I was exhausted. And I'm a little embarrassed to say this story, but I will, just for the sake of the power that it comes with. But I looked at the picture of the Rebbe in my house. I have one of him giving me $1. And I would say in a frustrating way, just thinking to myself, Rebbe, I'm working like crazy. I've taken on myself much more than I can. And I have nothing from you, nothing. Although I did come to you when I was 6 years old, that first year when Tzivos Hashem started, 2 months later, I had a personal audience with the Rebbe. My father I knew he wrote down the notes of my audience, but he lost them. And I'd asked them for 35 years, I'd asked him for those notes, and he never found them. Anyway, I didn't have that. I had come to the Rebbe many times. I had received dollars many times. But I was at home in England one time filling up my mother's car with what we call in England petrol, gas. And as I was filling up the car with the gas, I was kind of bored. So I put my hand into my pocket, took out my wallet, which didn't have any other English money, only dollars from the Rebbe, 32 of them. And without realizing, somebody was creeping up closer to me. And by the time I looked up to see the person, it was too late. He had grabbed the wallet from my hand, and I was left with nothing. And I just heard an amazing story how somebody, my wife's friend, who lived in England, had come to New York. She didn't even know she lost $1 from the Rebbe. And then someone else from England came, and he went shopping in Crown Heights and got change of this dollar that she had lost. And he didn't tell her about it until he got back to England. And then there was a story that her daughter got stuck in Israel in an Arab village, and she was scared out of her mind. And at that time, he remembered and he called her and said, I have $1 from the Rebbe for you that you lost. And I was like, Rebbe, why does everyone have these stories? And I got nothing. Now, obviously, I probably shouldn't have done that. And it was one of those, I would say, bad moments. But I did say to the Rebbe, if this is really real and you really want me to do this, $1. I lost 32. Give me back one. Anyway, I don't know when it happened, but a little while later, I fell asleep on the couch. But I do remember when I woke up, it was just after 2. I look at my phone, and that night, my father had found the notes of my first audience with the Rebbe. And it goes like this. What's your name? Shimmy. How old are you? 6. What are you learning in school? Chumash. or Siddur or Chumash? And I said, both. Do you know who Yaakov and Esav were? Yes. Do you know who their mother was? And my father whispered into my ear, because I didn't remember Rivka. And then he asked me, are you in Tzivos Hashem? 2 months after it started. And I said, yes, very proudly, because my mother had started Tzivos Hashem in England. And then he said to me, do you have any badges or stripes? Have you gone up in rank? And I said, no. And then the Rebbe said to me, you will go up in rank. And I had no idea about this because this had been lost for 35 years. And then, crazy. But then the Rebbe continued to say, here are dollars for Shliach Mitzvah. I said, thank you. The Rebbe said, you're welcome. And he said, this is for your family that do incredible work in spreading Yiddishkeit and Chassidus. And if I would have got that when I was a kid, of course, I would have felt the Rebbe was talking to my parents who do amazing things. But he waited till I needed it most. And that night he found it. And then came the bomb. My father told me that I looked inside the envelope because it was written on an envelope. And inside were the $2 that the Rebbe gave you.
Wow.
So I've always had a tremendous passion for Tzivos Hashem. My mother did run it in England for the children in the United Kingdom. But I've always had a very big passion for Tzivos Hashem. I never knew why. But a chassid knows that their first yichidus is what sets their path for life. And a few years ago, I found out why.
Beautiful. Rabbi, we're out of time, but I really want to thank you for taking this time. Thank you for all the wonderful work that you do and for spending time with us. We really appreciate it. We remind everybody tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, for some Parsha Insights. And next week, we'll bring you more learning and more special guests. Rabbi Weinbaum, 1,000 thank yous for all you do and for bringing so much enthusiasm to the children through Tzivos Hashem. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for this opportunity. Have a wonderful day.
Good night.